Sinuous.
Fire. Back off the streets.
Yeah. This album consists of a bunch of tracks that didn't make it to official releases, and still dope enough to wanna put it on repeat quick. So peep this, throw us in your CD player. Oh, I forgot the non-existent, dog. Shit has changed major. So scratch that, throw it in your iPod player. Like, my God, he write hard, I ball on you figures. Yo, they throw backs, give it away for free like, oh boy. Go and make noise when you hear, hope you jump for joy. I'm optimistic, glass ain't half empty, it's half full. Hopefully by now you know me from the Jazz Council, that was years ago. So I brought more fire to douse dudes and playing by house rules. I lay back like a couch dude. I'm that dude to make his own beats, writes his own rhymes, records his own shit. Probably why it takes so much time to put out an album. Man, I'm always behind schedule. Ain't that I ain't hungry, I just always got my plate full. Try to digest all the topics that I'm spitting. You need to sit back and actually take the time to listen. We living in a new age where mind states are feeble. Kids' attention spans are shorter than Danny DeVito. My beats though, be banging, be about my business. Bass stays knocking like a Jehovah Witness. Leave them scattering when chattering. The gang of rhyme patterns. I ain't worth challenging. You all need some aspirin. Aspiring to be me, no empires to feed. Just a chosen few that's flowing through. Firing up the weed. Jesus, crazy what the world coming to. I'm here to live it, make music. We all is
Oh, guys, that's the good stuff.
Wait a minute, man. Don't get me confused.
What's going on, guys? Whew, what a day. That was a long podcast. A fun one, though. I thank for those of you that were there, thank you for checking it out. Hope there was something interesting or a value there for you. I actually like talking about contracts. I don't really like dealing with them all of the time, but I like talking about them. Now we have some art to talk about. Lots of people in the chat already. Happy to see you all here. Hope your weeks have gone well. Hope your Friday's going well. Things seem to be working. We need to get some tunes on. We will do that. We got 2 things to paint over today. I did not get a chance in this crazy couple of weeks I had. I did not have a chance to do it in advance, so we're going to be doing 2 of them, and we're going to be doing them live. And I'm kind of trying to figure it out. Let's get some tunes first. And let's see, folks in the chat. Look at all you guys: Claudio, Com, Daniel, Ian, Jay, Vlad, Oleg, Ian, Clark. Which names have I said and not said already? I'm not entirely sure. Michaela, guys, good to see you all. Thank you for being here. If I missed your name, I apologize. I don't read good. Clark, yes, barely. That last question's a toughie. Legal. That's a real legal one, and it's a real gray area. And so I would advise you to be careful, protect yourself with your contracts. When in doubt, talk to a lawyer. Okay. Little discombobulated. Let's get myself organized and figure out what we are going to do for some painting today. Okay. Let's see. Everything seems to be working. Is there any comments that I need to? We got the beer going. I had coffee and water. You saw I was responsible. Now it's time for a beer. It's been a long week. But we get to do some painting, which is always fun. Let's see. We are going to get started today. I'm kind of looking at these for the first time. I literally was loading them up. I was loading them up into Photoshop for the first time whilst you guys were listening to some Sinuous. So I apologize if we're going to have to do a little bit of figuring out, but, always fun to kind of have to go and think through all those types of things. How's that volume-wise? I think that's good. There we go. We got some tunes on. And now we just need to get the screen. Okay. So for this image is by David Stocco, and thank you for sending it to me. As a quick public awareness, if you guys want me to do a paint over of one of your pieces, just send it to mike@droki.com, or you can find me somewhere on any Instamedias and DM me or something, and I'll leave you a note about it. Ian, I'm glad you're digging the tunes. I thank you for that. Okay, so for this image, let me double check my email to see if he mentioned anything specific. Oh, and I'm sorry, this one is not from David Stocko. I was mistaken. We're doing David Stocko after this. This is Kisan Goswami, and I think I just saw you in the chat, Kisan. I did. Welcome. Sorry about the mix-up. And let me see if there's any specific notes in here. No specific notes. Fantastic. But he sent 3 images, so we kind of have 3 different lighting setups. We have this kind of sunsetty one. We have this kind of midday-ish one. And this kind of like dusk night one. So, what do we want to do today? I think when you're looking at like these images, when you have like the 3 options, right, it's always a little bit tough. And we've talked about this a lot, because you look at it and you say like, oh, obviously like the colors are really nice in this. I can see some things where we could probably make it a little bit stronger, but I like the idea. If you're trying to get like the color of the building across, like a more neutral lighting would help, right? Like this pink is like a very bold color for this building. And I'm assuming that this is a building. We'll talk about that in a second. And then there's obviously like a very different mood to this one. The one I'm most drawn towards this, the kind of beautiful sunset one. But there's going to be some cost to doing it. But I think that this is the one that we'll do like a paint over on. This one is a little bit backlit, which is a little bit of a strange decision, I think. But a high sun is often pretty tough to deal with. And this one, I think you could bring some color back. But I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at this one. Like if I was to pick one of these images that I like the best, it's this one. And so my thoughts on it, my initial kind of reaction, and obviously it's being informed by having looked at all 3 of them. But my initial reaction, one is that there's a kind of a strange scalar relationship going on in this. If we just, there we go. If we just kind of paste over all of this. Whoa. Use Photoshop, Mike. You know how, what? Oh yeah, I was playing with some things. If we look at like the foreground just like this, the scale of this suggests that like it's pretty, like this seems like, you know, maybe like a foot, 2 foot, less than a meter. But then when we look at like how quickly it transitions to building size, there's a disconnect, I think, on the scale, which is affecting the read of the building to where like, is that an object in the field? Well, the trees are small, so it's got to be building size, but then the foreground, and I think it's really texture scale. And it's getting hard to kind of view it. So I think we're going to paint over this, so it's going to get rid of the scale of that. But I'll just be very mindful of that kind of thing. The other thing that I'm seeing, or that I'm like initially kind of reacting to, come on, color. I like this little color picker, but I don't like the delay. Is that like we have our main, you know, building here, and then but visually we have to kind of go like this to get to it. Which I like the idea of having like a movement like to get up to it, but this one I feel like is obstructing as opposed to guiding. It feels like I need to go around something as opposed to through something. So those are my first thoughts. My other thought is that we have this backlit, like there's a lot of atmosphere in this, and yet there still feels like there's some light on top of the building. I think I would go a little bit more silhouette-y on it, and continue to separate it more. Look, like we have all this lens flare and atmosphere over here. We have almost none on the left. So I think we can kind of tie all that together a little bit. I love the colors in it. I love the colors. I like that we have this kind of like strong graphic design of a building. Is David, I would be curious, is this a client image? Was this something you were practicing? Not David, I'm sorry, Kisan. Is this a image you made for fun? The dirt thinking through the narrative on this one, right? Like we have like a dirt path leading up to like this modern, you know, building. There's some narrative disconnects there that I think can be worked on, and we don't have any vegetation besides trees. Which, if trees are growing, you would think there would also be some like grasses of some sort, bushes. Okay, let's start painting. That's enough talking. I love the color on this. I like, at an initial thought, I like that we're looking straight at this thing. Like I like the kind of general composition, but we might shift a few things. And I'm just realizing now that I think that this building's not centered. It is not. It's off to the right a little bit with the sun. We might change that. Okay, first things first. First things first, let's think about value. All right, we have this building that all the light in this scene, right? We have an in-frame light for the sun. And I'm taking the time to like actually select out these little pieces because I think compositionally it's important. And I can't really see this one. We'll fix it later. Fix it in post. We're in post. Way to go, Mike. We didn't do that bad on the guess, but we didn't do great. We are going to get like the actual silhouette for this building because I think that it's important. Because whenever you backlight a subject like this, what you should be reading, or what you would be reading if this was like an actual photograph, is definitely the silhouette more than anything else. Oops. The silhouette would be more visible than this front side, which I'm gonna guess either happened from post work or an extra light. Maybe, maybe not. Right on, Kisan. Hey, sometimes you start an image and it doesn't go exactly where you were planning for it to go. Nothing wrong with that. So I think something like that. Okay, we got a silhouette. Let's keep it there. And we're just going to put a mask on there, and then we have that saved. Fantastic. So what I think we're going to do, and we're obviously just kind of figuring stuff out here, but I want more depth in this image overall, and I think what I want for this building do something like that, and then we're going to start matching values. Right, so that outside of this one, outside of this, I want more separation over here. This is always that kind of like awkward phase of when I start changing things. I have an idea of where this is going to go, but I don't know quite how I'm going to get there just yet. And I'm not entirely sure whether the idea is going to work. So we'll do a little painting, see if we can't get this to read a little bit more. But do you see, one of the things you can see right now, you see how nice and clear this right edge of the image is? Right, like you can read the silhouette and see how we start to kind of lose that over here on the left. I want the building to be like the main subject for this guy, which is going to take a little bit of doing, but I'm okay with it. Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's bring that side down just a little bit. We want to make sure that we keep this kind of shadow in here. But again, like when we're looking into the sun, so if we say like, it's not really foggy, it's not fog, it's like a dusty sunset. Let's see what that gives us. Here we go. First image. First image. You see how like we're looking straight at the sun. There's kind of all of this atmosphere inside of the inside of this scene. But even the buildings have like almost no definition on the front. Even this guy who's pretty close to the camera, all we read is his silhouette. Right? There's no detail in front of him. We can see like a phone or something that's actually like illuminated, but otherwise no detail. And so this is kind of the direction I would want to go with this image, or the one that I have in my head. To answer your question, Ian, yes, my hand does get in the way sometimes. I'm getting more used to it, but it's a work in progress. Okay, so this one, we bring out too much contrast over on this side, so we're just gonna kind of keep painting. And we're gonna continue, and then I'm gonna kind of sit here and think of this almost in black and white the whole way. If we look at copy image, if we look at that image that we were just looking at and we paste it into here, it's still completely legible, right? Like the color gives it like a mood and everything else, but it's the value that's defining or constructing the structure of this image, not the color itself. It is so hot in here, guys. I got that door closed. That window's not enough. Computer's kicking out all kinds of heat. I think it's time that the AC starts to come out. Okay, so let's keep going here. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna basically, when I was starting there, I was kind of starting to think that maybe I was going to actually just like edit this into an image, into the image that I wanted it to do. And now I'm reconsidering that and thinking that this is gonna be painted. If nothing else, at least just for speed's sake. Yeah, let's not deal with that at all. Oh, I'm changing a few I have some keyboard shortcuts that I'm starting to change, or wanting to change, I guess would be the better way to put it. And why I decided to change them right before Paintover Friday, I don't know. I clearly wasn't thinking. But we're just gonna kind of start and try to pull out some of this depth. Why is that not painting it? Oh, there we go. And put the flow up to like, we'll do like 70, something like that. Ah, much better. Grab some of this. So many things clicking. Even though we're painting, we can still use some of these tones. I am sampling. I am technically painting in color here, but we'll see whether it looks good in color or not at the end of all this. My bigger concern is that we start getting something that reads. Right, and clearly, like, that's not like the best approximation of trees I've ever made. We'll work on them. We'll get there. But we don't want like a ton of detail in them. What we want is silhouettes. Right? And that's another thing. You don't really have any trees that stick out from like a silhouette perspective. Let's just keep painting over it, and then we will kind of think about it. Right? Like, anytime you backlit, this is almost always true, even if it's not like this is a atmospheric day, but even when it's not atmospheric, whenever you backlight something, the main bit of contrast that you're going to start reading is invariably the silhouettes, more so than like the surface detail. What color do I want? Yeah, that's so crazy. I mean, like, that looks like I just painted a gradient, right? Value relationships matter a whole lot. We'll take something in the middle and just kind of start to blend it out just a little bit. Just to start to bring this kind of, start to bring it down. And we'll clean up some edges maybe in a little bit. What time is it? 20 minutes in already? Not made much progress. And how do we want to deal with this path? What I think we want to do, what I think I want to do, is take these rocks here and move them over a bit. And just kind of thinking about big shapes as much as possible. Let's come down in value just a little bit from that. See, like we have like everything pegged. All the way up in like 100% values. We're gonna bring that down a bit. We'll go back to working in black and white. Okay. Right, oops. And like the thing that we want to keep in mind kind of the whole way is that we want the darkest things up in the front, right? And like as you go further back in these types of atmospheres, the darkest a black can be gets lower and lower. So that's probably going to need to get lifted up quite a bit. All right, let's just go ahead and set like a decent kind of like mid-gray black for that guy. So now we have like a point at which we can bring anything in front of that. It needs to be at least that dark for shadows. That's probably too light. That's okay. We can fix it. And now there's going to be more atmosphere on the right side of this image where the sun is kind of generally coming from. Can you see it? Like, oh yeah, we have it. Just realized something. Either way, the more directly you look at the sun, the more you are going to get atmosphere. So there will be less over here on the left, but not so much that like this doesn't have any and that has a lot. I'm going to keep this guy sitting here in black and white for the time being. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull this whole image down. Oh, there we go. We're going to pull this whole image like down in value. Right, and if we're gonna have the sun sitting in here, right, the sun's always gonna be way brighter than the sky around it if it's actually visible and not being obscured by clouds or anything. So we want to make sure that we're giving that off, right? And then the sky will have a gradient that will be in both color and in value. For here, we're just going to kind of focus on the value. one of the things that I like about like this type of exercise, and by exercise, you know, basically meaning like repainting in like the values that I want, is it makes you focus just on that, right? Like color can be really, really deceptive. And it can I don't want to call it a crutch because that's not fair, because you can do a lot with color that you can't do with just the values. But if you don't get the values right, the colors just kind of have a tendency to like mask problems, in my estimation. Obviously, that's a subjective statement. But we can start kind of trying to pick out the things that we want to pick out in values. And like right now in color, we've lost like the prettiness in color. But right now, when I look at this image, which is the start of this in black and white, we have a value problem. Like the front-facing surfaces of this building are super duper bright, even though the sun's way, way behind them and low. And we're not getting like that clear separation that I'd like to see. This, we're kind of starting to give some things room. I feel like it might be nice. Might be nice if our building here maybe the whole thing sits a little bit lower. Something I quite like about that. Let's just kind of quickly scribble away our lines. Something about these kind of like deserty kind of scenarios that I quite like a low in the frame horizon for. It kind of starts to give like a gives a feeling of like how would I put into words, of like a big sky, right? Like the sky is always the same size, but there's like that feeling of grandeur that comes from everything. And obviously the sun will be the brightest thing in the image. Everything else might go a little bit darker. Oh, I moved the mask that I was just going to use, but we can grab that guy and just pull it straight down, move, there we go. Get it somewhere in the right world. Let's just give it a mask so that we don't have to do that again. We want that to be black, da da da. And like, I don't know if you guys saw that, like by like lifting the blacks, and all this curves layer is doing is lifting the blacks. You create like another depth into the distance. Morning Depresso podcast, Stefan. My pleasure. And thank you for having me. How are we doing on? We're 30 minutes in. Let's see if we can't get this composition just a little bit stronger. That feels just a little bit too dark. Now the example image that we looked at and quickly Googled didn't have any definition in it, in the foreground, and you don't have to go that extreme in away from the sun facing surfaces. You don't have to go that extreme. You can have a little, but it's always going to be subdued. So we'll just kind of leave that there for now. Like there would be a shadow over here. That shadow would be a little bit darker over here. And then we think if this is kind of coming in here and framing it, I think I would probably either put this building right in the center of the frame or change it. I feel like that's kind of like 1 point perspectives that are really close to being 1 points, but are a little bit off or not quite centered or turned just like a couple of degrees, so you're almost horizontal lines. And my like general feeling there is always, if you're going to be close to a 1 point perspective, or if you're almost going to have something like centered and symmetrical, either make it actually centered and symmetrical, or make it far enough away that it doesn't look like just like it was a mistake, so to speak. And then we could probably come in just a little bit more with these rocks, but still give like some like framing direction to everything. So that's sketchy and in black and white, and I'm pretty sure if we turn off black and white, I don't think just upping the saturation is going to bring that back. Yeah, we'd actually have to spend some time to get the colors right on this guy, which we do not have time to do. So we'll just look at it in black and white. But Kisan, I hope that makes a little sense as far as like the general kind of direction that I would go, right? Like, I like pulling the building down. I would adjust the scale of some of your textures over here, but I'd also adjust their placement so that they're a little bit further apart and like not quite as obstructing. They can still come in. I don't mind them coming in a little bit to kind of give you like this type of movement. But I wouldn't go so far as to have them kind of blocking. I don't think. I hope that was a little bit helpful. When I do these live, I feel like one half of my brain is trying to talk to you guys. The other half is trying to make sure I manage to do something productive. And as a result, when I think back over what I was talking about for the last 25 minutes, I have no idea what I said. So I hope it made some sense. I hope the idea of that is generally helpful. Pull out the silhouette, reduce the contrast on things facing you, and then pull out some of the silhouettes of the trees. Here, very, very poorly drawn. But just having a few of them and like maybe introducing some other trees that have some different profiles. These kind of look more like rocks to me. But that's a drawing issue. By not having them be like, right now they kind of make this top line here, and you can start to see one stick out here, but then you lose it down underneath between like, there's no visual depth between this tree that we're looking at right here, right? And these mountains that are way beyond. And so like lifting the backs and really controlling your values and making sure the sun is the brightest thing. You can almost, the sky right next to the sun is almost as bright as the sun itself in this image. As opposed to like really bringing that out. You can still make the sky nice and bright, absolutely. But if we look again at like a piece of reference, if we turn this guy to black and white, like, you know, that's pure white, that's down into like the mid-gray area. And so just building, you know, this is effectively a z-depth map, right? And so that's the direction that I would go for. Oops. Go over here. I hope that helped a little bit. Thank you. Thank you for submitting an image. I very much appreciate it, Kisan. Okay, moving along. Now we have David Stocko. Stocko? I think Stocko? I'm terrible with names. Let's see here. David Stocko. That's at least what I have written down. Now for him, he sent me a bunch of images. And I wasn't sure which one I was supposed to look at. Let's close that. There were a bunch of like test renders. We had one that was like looking down. I think that was like the last one. And then we had one that's kind of looking through. Another one that's looking through with some red. That was super low res. I believe this was for Fabio's The Thing challenge. I think that's what we're seeing there. So we have 3 images. And they all are kind of playing with this idea, it would appear. We're putting some depth in. Fantastic. Just one layer. That one's super low res, so I'm not even going to try to paint on that, even though I do kind of like painting on low res stuff. Looks like we have slightly different compositions between these two. This one's more solid. This one's got a little bit more space going through it, and then this one's looking down. Kappa. I'm not sure what kappa means. Pass? Not sure what happened in all of those. Well, I think if you're gonna go for this idea of having like the kind of Inception thing with the buildings hanging down, I don't think that this is the right camera for it. I like this camera. There's something cool about this perspective going on. But I feel like if this is the case, like why even have the city at the top from this, right? And I feel like that if you're going to make a city kind of coming up and down, you know, between it, you want an image that shows that off. Oops. So we're going to say I'm not going to paint this one, even though I do like the start of that image. I don't think it's the right one for this sandwich city. And I think we might combine these 2 images. I don't know if this is at all interesting for you guys or not, but this is like my way of like thinking through. This would be the same way I would think through a question if I was trying to like pick a composition, or at least I'm trying to like think through that way. I like in this image that we have a clear path kind of into this image. We can see some space in between, but like the top feels quite heavy. This image, I like that it feels a little closer to the camera, but I don't feel as much of like that separation between lower and top. It's amazing what just a little bit of depth does, right? Like that feels completely different with that turned off. I'm sure this one does too. This one does as well. Okay, let's start with this one. I'm going to grab this one and I'm just going to copy it as it is. And I'm going to copy it into this image so that if we want to use it, we have it there. And I'm going to close the other one to keep myself organized. Okay, so the immediate things that I like that we have some of these verticals connecting top and bottom. I like that the top feels present. We might want to change that just a little bit and bring it even more so away from the top edge. What I don't like about this image, like the biggest thing, is that we have something that's like that we can call background, right? Like the other side here, and then everything else is kind of mid-ground, and we don't have any foreground. We don't have anything that's kind of anchoring us into the space. It feels like we're kind of like looking at it as though it was like in a glass box or diorama, as opposed to like really being into the world. So that's what I'm going to try to fix, and I'm not sure what the answer is. This is another one that I'm just going to do in black and white because like we're looking at kind of a monochromatic image to begin with, which means black and white will be just as good as far as trying to figure this out. And I don't know what the answer is going to be. But I do like, this is clearly like a very rough test rendering. We have a lot of noise and all of that, which is great for like Paintover, right? Because you don't feel like you're messing up. Like the last ones were like very polished. It was a clean rendering. And it's always a little weird to paint over top of that. This is like easy to paint over because it feels like it's still a work in progress, which is awesome. Okay. So let's, we're not even gonna pretend that we're not gonna work in black and white. We're just gonna put a hue saturation layer, drop everything down. And what we're gonna do, gonna reduce like the overall contrast. Because one of the other things I guess that's worth saying is that there's not like a real like shape to this composition just yet. There's a really cool idea, and there's like a cool kind of like world being built, but the composition itself doesn't quite, quote unquote, speak to me as far as like a structure or a hierarchy. And I think we're gonna make some pretty big changes actually now that I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna try some things. I don't know that this is going to work. Don't know that this is going to work, but as I keep saying over and over and over again, you can't figure these things out always in your head, or at least I can't. It's beyond my capability. If I want to figure out like something visual, I need something to start reacting to. And the best way to make that is just to start doing. Alright, so we'll start drawing with a bit of an idea. And see if we don't end up with, you know, something that actually kind of starts to work. You never really know. But these types of exercises, and this is again, this is like, it's a value in like depth study, right? And it's like, it's really good practice, not necessarily for drawing, even if you don't care about being able to draw. Obviously, like, it's a skill that I've been working on within this, you know, sorry. I was trying to figure out how long we've been doing these live streams. This is Paintover number 9, which means we're at the end of the 9th week of this, which means we've been in quarantine for 10 weeks over here, which is bonkers. Anyways, even if you don't want to learn drawing, that's not something that you want to do, but you know, obviously, zero judgments on that. Do whatever makes you happy and keeps you interested. But doing some kind of like value studies, right? And you could do the same thing by rendering out some masks, or one of the things that I also do quite a bit is in 3D, I'll just desaturate the frame buffer. So I'm just looking at values and then trying to really kind of start to shape what we're looking at. And trying to get the values to read first. It's just a great way to like train your brain to really kind of think through composition, and to train yourself to like see values as much as possible, because they're super important. and color can be very deceiving. Go. You don't need Adobe telling us that we need to update things. And like we can and when you're thinking in depth, you can kind of control how far away something looks, basically almost entirely just by how dark it is. Right? If we take this color and just go a little bit darker, maybe a little bit darker than that, right? Like that looks like something way off in the distance now, right? Obviously overlaps matter. If we do that, it starts to get a little weird, but we can cover that up pretty quickly. Where do we start from? Oh, we have a Z-depth pass. Yeah, whatever. We don't need that at this point. Where did we start painting? Here. So there's a couple of things that are kind of starting to kind of come out that I'm liking, and I keep painting them apart. I don't know if you guys have noticed that I keep moving this guy a little bit more to the right and moving this guy a little bit more to the left. Excuse me. But like we're getting like a bit of repetition between this guy and then this guy, and then we can have this one start to climb up, and maybe it comes down here a little bit. I'm not sure about that yet. And then we're starting to get kind of like a sense of scale. I like the idea of these little guys popping up, and then we have little guys pointing down. How are we doing on time? 48 minutes. This one went kind of quickly, which I'm happy about. I feel like generally speaking, I look up and like a lot of time has passed. So we've kind of adjusted like the scale of things quite a bit. Ooh. As soon as that thing flipped, that corner needs a little something. Little something, and like it makes sense, right? Because this is the same as this. Oops. Pretty close in value, so we don't have any depth over there. So we have a couple of options of how we can do that. We can bring these down just a little bit. Right, so that we're forcing the eye to kind of follow this type of path. Probably go a little bit darker, so a little bit closer to camera. And then we can take this guy and push this back a little bit. And so, like, I think this one makes sense, right? Like, so we went from this where we kind of feel, to me, I feel like a little bit removed from the image. And then this where I feel like I'm like looking at, like, I've exaggerated the scale of it, which may or may not be your intention. But try to kind of place the viewer camera like more in the space of this. I think one of the things that I think that you probably could do to some degree, whereas like that's kind of what I did. Not quite. I think you used quite a wide lens on this one, David, and I think that using a longer lens might help you, right? Like zooming in, we start to see a little bit more structure, and it's a little bit easier to understand. We got all the flying ships, something like that, so that you don't have to follow like the actual kind of scalar or idea scale change that I kind of went down. You could still get the same compositional results out of a different change. And I think we could probably go a little. I think we could go maybe a little bit further as I look at it more and more. I think that well, that's kind of not sure about this one yet. Maybe, maybe not. We'll find out in a second here. Maybe that's just too much. And I feel like that kind of, oopsies, kind of it destabilizes the image. Maybe it's cool just to have it like that. And then you need to work out some stuff down here. You would want to kind of, obviously there's still a lot of things to be figured out, but there is something that I quite like about this as far as like an overall structure goes. And I think how small is this? I have no idea if you guys can actually see this, but you can hopefully, as soon as it switches to that, you see like you immediately get the composition that reads through as far as like an overarching structure that makes everything kind of fit somewhere. And then everything else is like, you know, details. Like clearly when we zoom all the way in, this thing's a mess of like random paint strokes all over the place. But you could take kind of the architectural language that you already have figured out in all of these buildings, and it's just moving things around until they're in place and then adjusting the lighting and all of that. And I would also encourage you to, both Kisan and David, I would encourage you guys to try it and see. Maybe you guys like some of the things I suggested, maybe you don't like them. I think trying them, or if I've explained them well enough that they can be experiment with them, and even if you don't agree with me, I think you might learn something of like what you do like. Just hearing it generally, at least for me, doesn't like, if someone gives me a critique on a piece and I just like, oh, okay, I'll try that next time, and I never actually do, I don't really learn anything. But if they give me a suggestion and I try it, whether I like it or I don't like it, I generally learn something. But it's the doing that sets it in. Yeah, awesome work. Thank you guys for submitting images. As always, I'm always flattered that you would think that there's something to be learned from this. I enjoy doing them. I feel like I learn something every time I think through these problems. And I think it's courageous to submit anything where you know someone's going to be talking about your work live and maybe saying nice things, maybe saying mean things. I think that's an amazing thing. I hope it was helpful. What else do we got? That's all I got, I think, at the moment. Good timing. Look at that. I got 5 minutes left. Claudio, thank you. I'm glad that you like it. It's a matter of like, what's the story you're trying to tell, and that's another thing that I don't think I've been talking about as much as possible, as much as I should be talking about it, which is that in making these decisions, it's always a decision of like, what's the story I'm trying to tell, and what visually will help serve that purpose, right? And so, if we're going to be telling the story of this, buildings coming from above and from below, that's probably the main story. And so what can we do to really kind of drive that home or increase that? I was thinking about it after yesterday's stream. Where is that image? I was thinking about it yesterday. I need to go back and like touch up a couple of little things on this. The image that I basically finished painting about yesterday, I was thinking, okay, what story are we telling? Well, the story that we're really telling in this image is it's all kind of about like the height of the stairways, right? And that's being given the most space inside of the image, right? The person is like a subject, but it's a framing element for her trek up these stairs to this daunting building. And I think the composition serves that purpose well. At least it feels right to me that's happening. And I think similarly for this one, if we're telling the story about these buildings that come down and these buildings that come up, a composition like this really kind of drives that home, and I think you could probably continue to push it further, right? Like by actually having buildings up here instead of just scribbles. But the composition, I think, or hope, works more towards that end, which I would argue is like the point of the image. Composition should always be serving a purpose. Always, always, always. We need like a color like a little bit darker, and then a little bit lighter than that. Something like that. Let's color that in. That was distracting me. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Kisan, thank you for attending. So, guys, that's what I got for you today. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful, wonderful, happy, enjoyable weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, all of that fun stuff. Maybe make something, maybe just practice something and don't share it. Do what you got to do. But thank you as always for joining me. I do appreciate it. I will be back on Monday. I am looking forward to next week because I'm going to have more time. And I've sent out one of the last 2 projects remaining this morning, and I have one more to send out this weekend. Looking forward to it. I'm very excited. So Monday, I'm not sure what we're going to be doing on the stream, but we are going to be talking about kind of my plans or some things that I'd like to try for the streams and all of that. For us to things that I'm thinking would be cool, that I think you guys would enjoy, that I think would be informative, and I think that I would learn something by making. So we're going to be talking about all of that tomorrow or on Monday. If you guys have suggestions, I would obviously love to hear them. Because if you guys don't enjoy what I'm making, what's the point in making it? At least these, right? So please let me know. Until then, be safe, be kind to one another. Stay safe. Awkward time. But while I'm looking for awkward time, cheers. Oh, if I didn't do the cheers, we would have hit like an hour right on the nose. So close. So close. Okay, guys, we will see you all in a couple of days. Be well. Talk to you soon. Beep. Oh, that got awkward real quick. Boo.